Hey everybody, this is your host Bill, and you're listening to the Late to Grid podcast. This is a podcast about motorsports and getting on track. I interview the guys and gals who work hard all week to be weekend warriors. I also interview professionals in the motorsports community that can help you and your racing. If you are into SCCA, NASA, track days, HPDE events, Champ Car, Lemons, or endurance racing, this is the show for you. My goal is to share the stories and inspiration that will grow our sport. In this episode, I talk with Dan Dennehy and Chris Carlisle, who race at the first SCCA Enduro at Nelson Ledges Road Course. Endurance racing has its ups and downs, and Dan and Chris share their race weekend details, what broke and how they fixed it, and how much fun they had. Chris had an interesting hotel experience. We talked about our chef, who Dan coined the Chief Hospitality Officer, and the guys share their advice on getting cars ready, volunteering, and getting involved in motorsports. So here we go.
As I mentioned, I am joined by Dan Dennehy and Chris Carlisle, who were at the SCCA Enduro at Nelson Ledges just about 2 weeks ago. And it was great to see them in the paddock, great to see them on track, and it's great to have them on the podcast. So welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you, Bill. Looking forward to our conversation. It was one heck of a weekend, so it's going to be fun to talk about your experiences and our experiences for sure.
Yeah, and I was actually talking with the Ohio region exec today on something, and naturally we gravitated, easy for me to say, back to the Enduro, and there's still a buzz going on amongst many of the teams in the SCCA community about VIR.
As there should be. I think it was I'm really looking forward to both of your perceptions of how the weekend went. I know from my perspective, both working and playing that weekend, it was really a successful weekend, a fun weekend. And I'm really looking forward to what VIR has to hold for the program. And then also when we go to Buttonwillow, when we go to Texas later on this year. So it's exciting stuff.
So help the listeners understand who we're talking to tonight. So Chris, we had you on in season 1, so we'll let you go second, but let's hear from Dan. Dan, share a little bit about your motorsports background, some of your racing, some of your plans for this year.
Yeah, so Chris and I know each other because we're both racers in Pittsburgh. Chris is actually one of my first buddies in motorsports, like 10, 11 years ago. He took me under his wing at an autocross, and over the last, let's say 5 years, I've matured from a pretty mid-pack hack autocrosser to a mid-pack hack time trialer. Got into endurance racing last year through Lemons. Now I do sprint format road racing with the club. I have a Honda Fit that we're hoping to get into the runoffs this year through the B-Spec class. And then we have the Volkswagen Rabbit, which has been our sturdy, trusty girl for all of our endurance racing. So been a lot of fun.
It all comes back to B-Spec somehow, huh?
It all comes back to B-Spec. That thing I got a couple months ago, and it's just the most fun thing to drive. So I don't get to take it out as much as I want to, but that thing is just wicked fun.
Front sway bar or no front sway bar?
We don't need that negativity. So no front sway bar in our life in that car.
Good stuff. And Chris, tell listeners a little bit more about who you are.
Unlike Dan, I'm a professional hack. I've been autocrossing for probably over 20 years. Past probably 10 years, I've been getting pretty hard into the time trial program with SCCA. Took third again at nationals this year, so that's 2 back-to-back third place podiums, so that's good. I was 2 seconds faster on the track than last year, but so was everybody else, so didn't help me out at all. And then Dan came in and gave me the opportunity to drive the Rabbit at Nelson's. Wasn't really planning on it, but I kind of wanted to go ahead and get back into an endurance race at some point, and to do it at Nelson's was kind of special for many reasons. And yeah, so here we are, and it worked out pretty well.
That's awesome. So let's talk about the Enduro weekend. So what made you guys sign up?
Well, my love affair for motorsports, growing up as a kid was always IMSA, old school IMSA, GTU, GTO, the GTP cars, watching Brabham and the Nissan and the Great American Toyotas, and just something about racing a car for hours on end. Both wheel-to-wheel racing is captivating, but the idea that you could do it for hours is just ridiculous if you really think about it. Just the ultimate marathon run. And so, the Volkswagen, so 2008 Volkswagen Rabbit, it's not exactly what you would originally think of as a competitive race car. And in reality, it really isn't. It's just a great front-wheel drive tank. But about 2 years ago, actually 3 years ago, I should say, I was between career paths. So I've been in sales for over 10 years in insurance, fell out of love with it, and went back to school to become an automotive technician. So I'm a 30-something-year-old with a bunch of 18 and 19-year-olds, and then COVID happens. And the Volkswagen at the time had been built to do a time trial safely, so I had half of the cage. But aside from that, I was still street car, still had plates, and I was sitting underneath the tarp in my backyard. And so the COVID experience was an interesting one, especially seeing a lot of these kids kind of having their college experience taken away from them. And so I got a great group of kids together, and what we did was we basically rebuilt the Volkswagen into a full enduro car. And at that time, I wasn't working for the club. I was actually unemployed, technically, and got it in my mind that if we, did well by building the car, I get someone cool to drive with us. And so this gentleman right here is Mackenzie Kaufman, and he hooked it up where Randy Popes would drive with us at the 24-hour Lemons race in April of last year. And so we got the car ready, got it to Lemons, raced with him, incredible experience. And that just got me hooked on the endurance racing route. And we did another 24 hours of Lemons in Gingerman. And whenever I started working for the club, very early on in my work, so I work around our partners, I came to find out that we were going into endurance racing. And so as soon as I could be public with my friends about the program, I just reached out to this group of guys who were just all awesome. And I basically told them, we're doing the Nelson Ledges endurance race. Whichever car I have that still runs, we're going to take it. And Chris was, I appreciate him because he said, all right, the weekend right after Time Trials Nationals, let's just jump in a car in the middle of Ohio and just bake for 3 days and go do this thing. And that's what we did. So it was a great time.
Yeah. So you raced, you had Randy on your team?
Yes. If ever you get to talk to Randy, I think that in his brain, there's still a warm spot in his heart for that car because it was the most understeering front wheel drive car he had ever driven. Because keep in mind that this car had always been my backup car. Back when I was a time trial driver, I had a 2018 Ford Focus ST. And so that would be my aggressive, sharp, oversteery, lift off oversteer, do all the fun stuff car. And then a lot of friends of mine who are very new and very green to driving, well, I'd set that car up to be very safe, which is understeer, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he gets into it, like every pro driver, they want to have toe out in the back and they want to have crazy alignment. They want all the horsepower. They want to set FTD in the car. And Randy just had, it was even on his YouTube channel, the least amount of fun getting that car to turn at pit race. But he was a joy to have in the car. He's an incredible guy, super entertaining and gregarious. And we've been working on trying to get the car to rotate better ever since. And Chris got to, get the before and after, because Chris got the nod to drive that car in 2020, I think, too, or 2019.
Yeah, 2020 done at Nationals.
Yeah, and Chris drove it so hard he literally popped the rotor of the caliper off the back, bouncing it off the curbs because he was trying to get it to rotate so much. So we got a little bit better now. It's a totally different suspension underneath the car. But yeah, it's had a colorful history, this poor thing.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So Chris, what did you think when you got the call or the invite to come drive?
Initially, I thought it was kind of a bad decision on my part because I would done that. So I did the first time trial this year at Nelson's. In my time trial car is the S2000, and I had a week and some change between Nelson's and actually going down to Kentucky. And between trying to get the car ready, figuring out how I was going to get it down to Kentucky, actually trying to put on a good driving effort in Kentucky. And then I was coming back and I was going to be home for 3 days before going to Nelson's and attempting an endurance race. I had no time to really prepare. I wasn't even thinking about the endurance race until I was actually on the drive up to Nelson's. I was just mentally kind of exhausted. I told Dan a couple of times, but I was willing to go. And I was hoping I would just find the urge to drive once I got there. And we showed up on Friday, just went out in the car. Nelson's was wet. It just rained. I knew the car already, as Dan mentioned. I'd already, I have a history with that car. So went out, drove it, just kind of checked it out. Everything felt good on Friday was our test. Yeah, it was Friday. And then, and I'm sure we'll talk about this more, but then went through the weekend. And, I really just want to get, I've been wanting to dip more into doing an endurance race. I did it with the old Lake Effect Racing with you and Paul back, I think 2018, and the BMW E30 you guys had. And I just never got back to it, but I knew it's something I wanted to explore a lot more. And like I said, once again, because it was Nelson's is the first track I ever turned a wheel on in anger. And I think way back in like 2003. So to go do an endurance race there with the history of that track, and especially SCCA's first endurance race there, I had to be a part of it. I don't care how tired I was. I had to just go and be a part of it. So I just forced myself to crawl from Kentucky back to PA, then back out to Ohio again. And it worked out.
You're all rested up now?
I'm slowly catching back up. I figured out what day it is finally. So I'm getting there.
I think it's Monday, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it feels like that, right?
Yeah, exactly. So overall feedback about the weekend. What do you guys think about the event, the organization, the facility?
I'm going to let Chris go first because I want to hear his opinion now that he's away from me and out of the car. So he doesn't have to worry about team owner or anything like that.
Our team boss was such a no, he was. No, it was a really positive experience. Anytime you go into an event like this, you're going to have some adversity. Running 8 hours per day. Saturday went really good for us. Sunday kind of tested the team. We had a lot thrown at us on Sunday. And even with all that, like there was never a point where I was thinking to myself, this was a mistake or I don't want to be here. Just for as tired as I was of just driving, I was vested in it once I got there. I was enjoying myself. I was learning how to, I wanted to go out there and not be the fastest person. I actually wanted to learn how to do an endurance race. I wanted to learn pace. I wanted to learn not burning the car up. I wanted to, take my teeth out from doing time trial and learn how to conserve the car a little bit. And I felt like I got that Saturday. Sunday was a little bit different because I got to take the green flag for the first time ever in a race. And it was a pretty easy green flag because the car next to me, which was the one red 944, didn't show up. So getting into turn one, I didn't have to worry about Dan's car too much getting hit. But then in the next 30 minutes, it felt like it took forever. It felt like a dogfight.